Welcome back to this the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I have Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office of, and Chike Ogeah, Managing Director at McFoley Hospitality Limited. Thank you very much. We've had two guests who have commented on a wide range of issues. First, it was Dr. Muda Yusuf, who talked about economic issues, from President Tinubu's attendance at the Paris Summit on the new global finance impact, the new international economic order, to other domestic issues, harmonization of foreign exchange, foreign direct investment, and all of those issues. The banks, the central bank issuing new regulations with regard to know your customer and all of that. So we have a panoply of issues. And then secondly, we had the privilege of having Professor Jacob Kende Olupano of the Harvard University, who in the last 7 years has been having a program, a giving back program, in terms of providing opportunities for pre-doctoral and postdoctoral persons in Nigeria to encourage research and innovation. And he had a lot to say about the education system, about giving loans to students in Nigeria and all of that terrain. We can deal with that first, all of those issues, almost about 8 of them, before we look at other issues. Let me start with you, Chike Ogeah.
Thank you. I listened to Muda, Mr. Lawal, right?
Yes, Muda Yusuf.
Right. Exactly. Yes. He used to be the DG of LCCI, I guess.
Right. Yes, now he's in charge of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise.
And he's always been on point when it comes to economic affairs. He spoke about a lot of things and a plethora of economic issues, which are very germane and nothing out of the ordinary. He just stated the obvious. I think the first thing he said was that this proposed electricity hike, the timing is horrendous. For the first time, the people are buying into this situation of subsidies going, because at last we've all realized that these subsidies are going to be totally unsustainable. And even if it's going to bite hard, the populace, even the people at the lower rank of the society, everybody's bracing up for it. But too many of these policies at the same time might have an adverse effect. And this seeming good run that the administration seems to be enjoying will just go off in a flash. So I think they should take it very easy with that. He also talked about, look, subsidies in themselves are not the problem. That there are some good subsidies, like subsidies for tertiary education for the poor, will always be welcomed. So don't let us all believe that every form of subsidy is bad. So he made that point. He talked about getting the reforms that is going on. That of course we need FDI, which is what the president is talking about in France, and he agrees that Nigeria is ripe. The president has said this is business unusual. You ignore Nigeria at your own peril. We are welcoming people to come and invest in here. But that climate finance, which is one of the major things they talked about in France, is something that has not been working here. That a lot of, especially America and the UK, they have not fulfilled to any extent that kind of commitment to financing issues arising from flooding and all of that. He particularly said Japan and France have done better than that the Americans seem to be, putting more emphasis on the Ukraine war and financing that war than thinking about Africa and what's going on. Then he came to the CBN and he talked about this social media thing, which I personally think it's a crazy thing. I mean, how many people even have social media? What does that have to do with,
In case you have used the CBN on Twitter, they know who you are.
No, I don't do. I even go on Twitter. I don't have time for that. But the truth is that we have enough of these identity platforms for the banks, whether it's BVN, whether it's NIN. I think all that should be enough. You know,
they call it KYC. Know your customer.
Exactly. So that I think is enough for that. And you know, so basically those are the things he talked about. Then in the case of the professor, who I was very enamored, you know, seeing a Nigerian that accomplished, you know, and I, for one, I was just getting to meet him for the first time. It's where he is.
He's one of Yemi's fathers.
Yes, I can imagine.
Uncles.
Anybody from Ife, you know Yemi.
Anybody in academia.
Yemi is on my campus. So, and you heard what he talked about. He said, well, in his time when he left, he went to University of Nsukka, by the way, which was one of our first-class universities, and that going abroad, he doesn't see it as jackpot, which is the truth. You are just utilizing an option. There's nothing, so many of you, you know, Prof, you as well. You're a Malabite. So you go, you bring, the idea is to acquire these skills and bring it back and train our younger ones. We have profs like prof seated next to me here. So I don't think, you know, whether it's Jackpa or Jackpada or Jackpada, you know, whichever it is, the whole idea is that, you know, it's not really brain drain. You know, that's basically what he said, you know.
Okay, Professor Aworawo.
Yeah, so many issues at the same time. But I would like to begin with a comment made by Professor Lukwana regarding theorizing. Importance of theory and theorizing. For instance, when we write history, you could write history of Nigerian Civil War, history of the American Civil War and all that. When you want to theorize, you can say, okay, in all of these wars I've written about, what are the things that run through them that we can say, these are the causes of war? Then you can theorize. And when you are able to build on that, you can hardly make mistakes. And I want to link that to President Tinubu's, you know, programs. The fuel subsidy removal, which is people have embraced. And I agree entirely with Chike and Muda that people haven't embraced, you know, the fuel subsidy removal. Then just come in just a month, less than a month later, to say tariff on electricity would go up. That is like the Washington Consensus, you know, programs. What I just want to remind government is that the Washington Consensus didn't quite work well. And there is a post-Washington Consensus. Washington Consensus focused on liberalization, economic forces and all that. When they found that it didn't really meet needs of society and states, we now have a post-Washington Consensus, which focuses on poverty. Poverty, you know, tackling poverty, addressing the needs of the poorest. And when we link that to the policies, we'll say that since fuel subsidy has just been removed, I mean, it is almost incomprehensible that the poor reeling from the effect of that are not going to confront another such, you know, remover, which is hike in, you know, tariff on power. I don't know whether the president has approved it, but my advice would be that there should be a rethink. You know, last week I said the line between being a hero and being a villain is very thin, depending on what you do and how you do them. The impact, the negative impact of the removal of the fuel subsidy is already too grinding to add something else at this. And let me just tell you a real life experience. Many of our colleagues at the University of Lagos, you know, junior staff mostly and then non-academic staff who had cars no longer come to school with their cars. They can't fuel them. So they now come by public transport. We say, well, maybe that's a sacrifice they have to make. But those who used to enter public transport before, they now trek from Bagada, from Oworawo, they trek to campus. Wow. I picked one the other day, and when I dropped him on campus, the way he was greeting me, I was becoming embarrassed. He was just greeting and prostrating and greeting. Then I wanted to ask, why this frenzy? Then before I even asked, he said, you saved me 8 kilometers of walk. I would have trekked to school. So this thing is not a joke. And adding something else to it will be almost incomprehensible. and nobody can predict what the impact will be. We want to beg government that we should make haste slowly. The government is making haste, is good, you can speed, but overspeed is bad. You speed to your destination, if you are driving safely, you get there, but if you overspeed, it is bad. To add this to it, or anything else, will be like overspeed, which will not be in order. Then Professor Lupona and Jakpa, yes, there's also a theory on that, push and pull, we call it. What makes people migrate? The push factor is the factors where the man is moving from that are unfavorable, that are pushing him to go. The pull factor are those better conditions where he's going to. That is why people say they want to make law to regulate, to hold people from traffic. That is not possible. The push and pull factor will always be there. If things, just ask yourself, see many Nigerians in South Africa, some doing odd jobs and all that. How many South Africans in Nigeria are doing the same thing? Hardly any. Just because their own condition there does not warrant them coming to Nigeria to come and look for. So it's the push and pull factor. Brain drain, yes. There is an aspect of it that is bad though. If so many of your professionals are leaving at the same time, then your country will be left with, of course we have seen that in the banking and other sectors in Nigeria, where tech experts have all left and consequently they are not able to function properly. So migrating is good. Remittances back is also good, but when so many are leaving, the way it is happening now in Nigeria is a cause for concern. So if President Tinubu is talking about Jakpada, doing things that will make people Jakpada will be welcome, because it means that professionals will come back and contribute to development. If everybody that is professional leaves, then there will be nobody to develop. A country does not develop by itself. It's people who develop a country. So a brain drain is not so bad. Jakpa is not so bad, but when such a large number as we have in Nigeria now move away, then the country is, when we study the slave trade, that's one of the things we talk about, that those 12 million Africans that were taken away to the West contributed to the backwardness of Africa, because there were people of working age between 17 and 35, 40 who were taken away. That contributed to Africa's backwardness. So it has its own disadvantage when such a large number are moving, and something must be done to encourage people to stay behind. And we are happy with the reforms that are ongoing to achieve that. Okay,
Yemi Adamolekun, you are right at the center of this.
How so?
From birth. You were born in a university environment.
Oh, right.
So the Jakpada thing, it's a story of it's a story of your life. Okay. Do you think that Nigeria has an enabling environment to bring people back, to utilize Nigeria's talent, enormous talent, particularly now that we have a president that people say is Hurricane Tinubu and Baba go fast?
Right. Enabling environment, no. Hurricane and go fast, I don't understand those terminologies. He sacked Emefiele, removed fuel subsidy. These are things that should have been done by his same party, by the way. Let's not forget that his preceding party was APC. If it was PDP now, then we can say that, okay, he's coming and he's doing something different. The preceding party was the same party. So I'm not quite sure I subscribe to that. But are they good things? Certainly. Certainly, without a shadow of doubt. But to pick up on where Professor Aworawo left about theorizing. So one of the things, we say it in Nigeria that we don't have political parties driven by ideology. So that's why you'll be APC in the morning, PDP lunchtime, and by dinner time, you are Labour. But one of the things that a segment of the APC pride themselves on is calling themselves progressives. And so that they're very development focused, very people focused. So if we theorize that if you are people focused, your policies should reflect that you care about the people. We would then say, if we're going to write a paper, that the APC administration currently is not, according to the theory, is not aligned with what they postulate to believe. Thank you very much.
There is progressivism. That's a theory that defines that. And it captures what you're just saying.
Excellent. So if we're going to do that, then I think it's really quite instructive. And I'll say there's also piggyback on the clip that was played from Femi Falana, who said that we can no longer rely on Labour to speak for the masses and their challenges. And I might add that this is not just 2023. Let's be reminded that Occupy Nigeria, that was on the back of fuel subsidy, the protest that started, that put the country to a halt, was started by citizens who just took to the streets. That's right. Labour jumped on it after the fact. And obviously, Labour is probably the most organized group of workers. So if they down tools, it's much easier for things to come to a halt. That's January 2012. Let's fast forward to October 2020. the next protest that literally ground the country was also not started by Labour. Labour even had no input in this one. They didn't jump on it. They didn't do anything. So I think it's instructive in while Labour is slow, and obviously they're also dealing with a government that understands how Labour works. So really can call their bluff if in the way they normally strategize. But if they're really speaking for the people, which I haven't seen them do, if you put Labour aside, and if this government is kind of betting on the fact that Labour is not really doing anything, it will be to all of our disadvantage, not just the government, but also to us as citizens, if citizens take to the street out of the hardship that you just described. By the time someone walks 8 kilometers every day to get to work, I mean, at some point, something will crack. And when things crack under such pressure, it's not pretty. Because it's not something you took a scissors and you cut in a straight line. It's literally taking something and dropping it. It cracks into pieces, and it's not pretty. So it would be, as you said, I think make haste slowly. And I don't think it's really not, it's quite commonsensical, given where we are as a country and the challenges that people are going through, for the government to be quite clear that if this thing kind of goes pear-shaped, everybody will just be venting the anger that they're coming from wherever they are coming from. And as we saw with NSAS, you then leave room for people who are not just angry and want to protest legitimately, but people who then see a gap to then take advantage of that to carry out criminal activity. That's right. That you then, quote unquote, want to blame on protesters. Now, social media and CBN, I think I would maybe, unless I've mistaken the report, for me, I see it as not mandatory, because as you rightly said, not everybody has social media accounts. So it cannot be mandatory. The same way email is not mandatory. Now, also, the nature of social media, I can create a social media account that I don't use nor need. So you say you want it, I give you something, but I don't use it. Meanwhile, I'm tweeting or commenting on Facebook under some other name. So I'm really not quite sure how that makes any kind of sense. And lastly, on Japa and Japa dying, I think it would really be an interesting study. Professor Aworawo, maybe I should push this to you, to actually see over Nigeria's history, the push and pull factors, from 68 to the 70s to the 80s, for a university community, what were the prevailing global circumstances that provided the pull, and what were the prevailing local circumstances that provided the push? And obviously, you know, things are amplified because of the generation we're in. There's internet, there are things, and also, quite frankly, because technology and the nature of jobs that people are getting are also quite different. So that makes it seem like this time is the first time or the worst time ever. It might be the worst time in terms of numbers, possibly. It might be the worst time in terms of spread, because at a certain point it was doctors. At a certain point it was academia. Now it's everybody and everybody, and maybe that's what it is. And I think also tied to that is what you said, the caliber of people that are going and the numbers and the immediate impact we're feeling in the country. And lastly, that's all I wanted to say.
No, Yemi, you're absolutely correct. Before now, a lot of people got attracted to go abroad because of their competence, because they were global stars. I mean, the Oshintokuns of this world, and all those people, the Onobami Rose, the Wale Soyinkas, the Niyo Shundares, you know, all those people, the Kennedy DKs, they got attracted to go and work globally because they were part of the global diamonds. But these days, people are going because of economic circumstances, and Nigeria is grossly disadvantaged. And then you are also absolutely on the point about social media. The social media grants anonymity. If you ask people to give you their Instagram account, give you whatever account, they can give you fake accounts. How do you bureaucratically determine that? But let's take another very serious matter, because when we were young, we used to eat Ileya meat. It looks like this year is going to be a serious problem. 3 days to the Muslim festival of Eid al-Kabir. There are reports of exponential rise in the cost of rams, the traditional animal offering, which is the major source of meat for the celebration across the country. Not just for Muslims, but also for Christians and for everybody who used to enjoy it. Consequently, dealers in rams have been lamenting poor sales because of the persisting harsh economic conditions. Random market surveys in Lagos show that on the average, one of such animals that sold for 90,000 naira last year now goes for as high as 170,000 naira. The cost of transporting a trailer load of rams from Adamawa State in the north is now 1.6 million naira, as against 600,000 naira from last year. The central bank, meanwhile, has declared the removal of cash deposit limitations on domiciliary accounts. But is it domiciliary accounts that will be used to buy Ileya ram that all of us are looking forward to? So I don't understand though, because what we used to hear when we were young is that you don't kill chicken or turkey during Ileya, either Kabi. It's always ram, and it was for everybody. But now I hear that ram now is beyond the reach of ordinary people. Yemi, I don't know whether you used to enjoy surplus supply of Ileya ram, either Kabi ram.
Well, you know, I'm not quite sure why we're surprised though. I mean, this context is what we've been talking about all along. From walking 8 kilometers, the effect you see it in, I mean, they cannot walk the ram from Adamawa. They have to carry, they have to transport. It's true. I mean, maybe if they walked them from Adamawa, it would be cheaper, but they have to transport them. And if you do 600 to 1.6 million, that's almost, what, I can't do my math now. That's almost 3 times will be 1.8. So we shouldn't be surprised at the pricing that we have, and maybe it will be chicken and turkey that will be layered this time around. Or, and these are the things that then go to the points you're talking about. The people who have ram cannot sell them because people cannot buy them. So what then do we do with them? Because you have to keep feeding the ram. So that's an additional cost. So then what happens? I don't know. I really don't know what will happen this year. I mean, I'm sure you will still get your ram because you are you.
Which ram?
People will still send ram your way because you are you. But before I forget,
I buy rams myself.
Oh, really?
Because I'm surrounded by Muslims.
Aha, there you go. So how's your pockets going to? How are you going to do
don't
this?
worry. God will provide.
We are very,
Nigerian parlance. We are very religious people. God will always provide.
Sort everything out.
All my Muslim, relatives. Don't worry. We'll celebrate.
Somehow.
Prof.
Well, I would like to tie it to the general Nigerian economic condition at this time. The other time we talked about inflation, 22.22% to 22.4 something percent. That it's much higher, and I mean the cost of transporting the thing and other ancillary costs here and there. The cumulative effect is this high price. Let's not forget though that over the years, the cost of ram has always been higher during this festival time compared with other times. But this year, of course, coinciding with this fuel subsidy thing, it's just logical that the prices, will go up, which connects the point you have been making, that the suffering is already much, and that we should not do anything to exacerbate it. Everything should be done to ensure that things begin to improve progressively. I mean, the government talked about palliative. Nobody has seen anything yet. You're talking about 8 weeks to negotiate and all that. Why add another thing in between? So that's the point you are making. So I will imagine that this year people just have to endure, and we are appealing to government that these policies they should they should be broad, they should be perceptive in the way they are implemented, such that things begin to pick up progressively moving forward.
Okay, Chike, I know you are not a Muslim, but if you get Sallah, you will not reject it.
The truth is, I'm not a Muslim, but this has been a part of our culture and our way of life here for a long time, since I can remember being in Lagos, because I went to school with a lot of my Muslim friends. And in fact, I have maybe 5, 6 of them usually that I make the rounds. I start from somewhere in Surulere, I go to somewhere in VI, then I eventually end somewhere in Apapa, these are all my old friends. What I noticed that this last time when I said to them, "Hey guys, how is it?" Everybody was stammering. You know, they even said they will send to the office. I said, "What do you mean you send to the office? We normally come and eat it in the house." And the ram goes with jollof rice, you know, pepper soup. You know the way you say it, and so many ancillary exactly. So, well, but this happens to be the sign of the times. We just have to roll with the punches. So what can we do?
Well, you cannot be more correct. Sign of the times. But one thing I learned over this recent, years is that, okay, if you don't have enough money to buy a ram, you know, they usually slaughter the ram after the symbolic one has been slaughtered at the Eid ground.
Yes.
That's the right time to go to the ram market,
okay,
because the price will have crashed.
Down.
So you just rush there, you have your people on standby, they buy the rams, they go and deliver to the people you want to give the rams to.
Maybe
so that is the trick, okay, because the price will go down, okay, on Sallah day.
Now
if you go and buy before Sallah day, okay, you will pay more.
Now I see why they are all stammering and telling me they will send it to the office.
So that's the trick. In any case, let's now go to Russia. May we all have a happy Sallah, which is a season for both Christians, Muslims, and for everybody in Nigeria. We look forward to it. May it be a very happy season for all of us. Fighters from the Wagner mercenary group have left the southern Russia city of Rostov-on-Don with their leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin. The video posted on social media shows Prigozhin sitting in the back seat of a vehicle. Crowds cheer, and the vehicle comes to a stop as an individual approaches it and shakes Prigozhin's hand. He said, saying all the best to the people gathered before the vehicle drives off. It's the first time Prigozhin has been seen in public since he announced that his troops will turn back from Moscow and return to field camps. It is unclear where Prigozhin is currently en route to, but according to the apparent deal, he is expected to be sent to Belarus and not face any criminal charges. The deal was reportedly brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Earlier, news emerged that the Kremlin has forged a deal with Wagner Group boss Yevgeny Prigozhin to defuse the mercenary group's uprising. In exchange for Prigozhin's exile to Belarus, the mercenary leader won't be prosecuted, the Associated Press reported, citing a Kremlin spokesperson. The reported agreement comes after a paramilitary rebellion on Saturday in which the Wagner Group marched across Russia before suddenly turning around just 120 miles from Moscow. Prigozhin said he didn't want to shed Russian blood. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov announced that Prigozhin and the troops who follow him will not face criminal prosecution as part of the deal. He also said those troops who did not join in the uprising will be offered defense military contracts. Saturday's rebellion marked the strongest threat to President Vladimir Putin's power in over 20 years. Professor Aworawo, you are the professor of international relations here today. Is there a threat to Putin's hold on power, or is this stage managed in the context of the forthcoming elections in that country? What exactly is going on? Or is there, the hands of hidden manipulators in the development in Russia?
Well, I don't think it is stage managed. I think it's real. I think the turning back of the group marching towards Moscow was influenced by an assessment of what would transpire, and they're not having the guarantee that they would be able to defeat the Russian forces. When you want to go into a war, the justness of you're going to the war is not the only thing you consider. You also consider the capacity to win the war. Even if your cause is just and you don't have the capacity to win, nobody goes into a war in that along that line. So I think it is real. I think something happened along the line the group was not sure of victory, in approaching Moscow, and they decided to. I mean, of course, there were also negotiations here and there, and of course, they changed their mind and returned, and they said the leader will now go to Belarus. It's a challenge to the authority of Putin, and Putin himself was rattled. It's a cause for concern, regarding all the things that have transpired. We've always talked about this war, this invasion of Ukraine, that for Putin and Russia, it's a war of choice. It's a war that shouldn't have, been started at all. Wars are too serious and important to commence for those flimsy reasons for which this particular war started. And it is surprising that it's as if, these leaders are learning nothing and forgetting nothing. Because in that same area, where we had a war like that in the 1830s, and it was also an unnecessary war, just like this one. Because, when you look at what Putin has been saying, that he doesn't want NATO, around his borders, because NATO poses a threat. But now we have had Finland has joined NATO, and Finland has a very long borders with Russia. What that means is that the main objective of starting the war is already defeated. So it's a threat to Putin. It is not state managed. And if Putin is somebody who reflects, who engages in introspection, he will know that he made a huge mistake in that invasion of Ukraine. All of these things and disruption it has had all over the world, the negative impact on Russia, on Ukraine, and the rest of them, would have been avoided if, in fact, when the Americans were saying that they had intelligence which established that Russia would invade Ukraine, people dismissed it. Because people thought it would be too foolish for anybody to carry on such, a rascally adventure at this time. People thought that the world, no country in the world had a leader like this anymore. But as we say in international relations, the idiosyncratic variable came to play. The persona of Putin, changed the dynamics and determined what has happened. How this war comes to an end now will be the next thing. We don't know how, but what happened yesterday is a threat to Putin, and those who are close to Putin, if he's not reflecting deeply, should make him know that this is the time to end this war. It is not in anybody's interest that this war started in the first place and that it has dragged on until now.
Okay. Chike Ogeah, let me come to you.
For me, I think the big pity is that they didn't see through what they started.
You wanted a coup in Russia.
Yeah, because like you said, Putin is a threat to world peace, and is a slowdown. A lot of the things happening in the world, the slowdown in the economies, even COVID, these are the things that are causing a lot of disruptions to the world economy, this Ukraine war. And like Prof said, what is the rationale of this war? There are still leaders like Putin, definitely, because Putin is there, even if he's the only one. He's autocratic, he's unbending, and he's aristocratic, and he feels that he knows it all. And, he's also a bit of a tyrant, if you were to ask me. And yes, it is true that it will have been Russian blood being, shed all over the place, Russia killing Russia, and I think that was the major dilemma there, and that was why they had to pull back. But I think something should have jolted Putin, and the truth is that we really don't need leaders like Putin in 21st century, especially in first world and world powers and all of that. People like that, they have access to nuclear power, and you don't know what they can do. That, I think, is a threat to world peace everywhere, definitely.
Okay, Yemi, Adamolekun.
Quickly, I'll pass on that actually, because I got a note that I didn't speak about, as you said, what I was born into, student loans, universities. I think just to really piggyback on what Professor Olukwono said, the 2-week institute he's doing in Ife is fantastic, but the truth of the matter is it's not enough. If we don't fundamentally change how universities are funded and structured in Nigeria, we will not be able to compete globally, no matter how many good intentions Professor Olukwono we have. That's number one. Number two, student loans are great, problematic around the world, and this particular one, the conditions and the framing of it is problematic in and of itself. But the more fundamental point is that the federal government is not prioritizing, again, back to our theorizing about progressive, has not prioritized education. Not at the primary school level, not at the secondary school level, and not at the tertiary level. So if we have limited resources and we want to subsidize education, which we should, it should be primary and secondary, certainly not tertiary. I mean, you and I have had this conversation several times when ASU goes on strike. My point is, first-generation universities are first-generation universities for a reason. University of Lagos, University of Ife are not mates with Jigawa State or University of I don't know where. Because by virtue of how they were set up...
These other universities are creations of establishment acts.
Hallelujah. I'm happy for them. My point is that what I'm just saying, that the pedigree and the history that they carry is not the same as a university, because we've turned universities into almost constituency projects. You get a university, you get a university, everybody gets a university, but that's not the essence of tertiary education. It is to some degree... anyway, so the point is that if this administration is doing these loans to the point where they want to start charging, I actually read that some university, Ambrose Ali, is now charging 740,000 or something like that. I saw the news yesterday. So if that's where we are going in this current economic climate, it's a problem. And it's a problem because the loan structure is a problem, number one. Number two, Ambrose Ali and University of Lagos are not mates. So the federal government then needs to allow the universities not only to charge a fee that makes it make sense, but in addition to loans, then we're talking scholarships, then we're talking bursaries. There are different ways to allow students to pay for it, such that brilliant students or students who just want an education and make the requirements can actually access it without being shut out. So,
okay, let's talk about elections. Yemi, I'm going to come back to you. So just get ready. Results have been awaited after voters in Sierra Leone went to the polls to vote in presidential and parliamentary elections yesterday. And this comes after a tense campaign marred by violence. On Wednesday, the main opposition party alleged that one of its supporters was shot dead by the police, which the police have denied. Supporters of both main parties have been accused of attacking opponents. The election is taking place against the background of a troubled economy, the rising cost of living, as well as concerns about national unity. Voters are choosing a president, members of parliament, and councillors in the country's fifth election since the Civil War ended in 2002. The two presidential candidates, major presidential candidates, because there are 12 of them in that election, say they will prioritize boosting agricultural production if elected to lead the country.
I hope and pray that everybody comply and vote peacefully and go back home and wait for the results. Whenever wins, we support him or her. Yeah, that's what I hope. And I hope that the election will be free, fair, and credible.
Well, I feel so proud because that makes me to feel so happy that the Sierra Leoneans really want their freedom and they want their rights, and so I'm really happy for that. To see everybody, I'm really happy.
One peaceful election, no fights, no each languages. After cast a battle, go home, sit down. The officials count the result, they call the winner.
Were two major candidates in that election. Kamara, whom you saw earlier, who is the presidential candidate of the All People's Congress, APC, the APC in Sierra Leone. He lost to Julius Maada Bio, the incumbent president in 2018. And Julius Maada Bio is seeking a second time in office. He's the candidate of the Sierra Leone People's Party. We've been told that turnout has been very high, but at the same time, the usual problems, late arrival of materials and all kinds of irregularities. But the International Observer team is in that country observing, and we're hoping to get results in the next 48 hours. Violence before the election, snatching of ballot boxes, usual African story. But Yemi, you are the civil society expert. What do you think?
I mean, I think the West have done a really good job in selling democracy as the be-all and the end-all of Africa's problems. We get to choose our elected officials, that's the key, blah, 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 blah. But what we haven't done, honestly, is taken the time to educate ourselves on what democracy means. And we see it playing up in different African countries. Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Senegal is fighting over a possible third term, if maybe, if not. Sierra Leone has 3.4 million voters. That's about half the number of voters in Lagos, for context. But we are still having these same issues because fundamentally, we as a people have not, in a sense, internalized what a democracy means. So it's still my person, my ethnic group, my party, my area, my whatnot. But one thing I actually wanted to flag that a lot of Nigerians have been talking about on social media is their ballot paper. So their ballot paper has a picture of the candidate, has the name of the candidate, and has the political party of the candidate. So it's a lot of advocacy around people, like for a country with the illiteracy levels that we have, that maybe that's what we need to look at. 4 years ago for INEC, the challenge was that we had, I believe, 91 parties. So if they made the boxes bigger to take in the picture and the name, our ballot paper will be, I don't know how long. But now that we only have 18 parties, we might have less after this election. I think it's something that certainly should be advocated. We now kind of have the paper room to do that.
Professor Aworawo, we have just about 3 minutes to go. Quickly.
Yes. The question we want to ask is, when will we ever have an election in any African state that will not be marred by violence? We should do better than we are doing now. A small country like that, if you visited Sierra Leone, the level of poverty in that country is extensive. Standard of living is grotesque. Those should be the concern of the people, not fighting over whoever is elected. Let them support him, either Bill or Kamara, to be able to develop the country. I mean, a few years ago, you could meet a Sierra Leonean who is 12 years old, who is just entering primary school. There was a lost generation in the course of that war. So that should be the focus, and not all of this fighting and all that. I'm happy the way the other man spoke. Whoever wins, they should rally around him. Sierra Leone is far behind most countries of the world, and they need to put everything they can put together to ensure that the country begins to make progress, to catch up with everyone else.
Well, sir. Chike Ogeah?
Yeah, I think Yemi hit the nail on the head. I think this whole idea of selling democracy as the end-all and be-all.
One size fits all.
Yeah, that I think is the major problem. Because like she rightly said, putting it in context, 3.4 million voters, that's what I've just been thinking about. That shouldn't be a problem. You should have the best election possible. But yet, these challenges are still there, which shows these things are not autochthonous to us. It shows that they are not really a way of life and all of that. Maybe if we started thinking about some system that is more Afrocentric and suited to us, and then we can mix some democracy in it, even for Nigeria, maybe we might start getting better results than the kind of fiasco we come up with in elections. And like Prof said, leaving the fundamental issues of development and poverty.
Well, thank you very much, Chike Ogeah. Thank you, Professor David Aworawo. And thank you very much, campus baby, Yemi Adamolekun. You've been watching This Is Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching.